Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Podcast, presented by the Daily Pal.
This is Pranati
and Purva,
and we're from the dailypow.com, a Bombay-specific food and culture website, and this is our weekly podcast, The Podcast. Now, on this episode, which is an installment of Bombay Binge, in which we talk about food in the city, we have with us Manu Chandra, and Manu Chandra is a chef partner at many restaurants and bars, and his new restaurant, Toast and Tonic, is going to open in Bombay, in BKC, in fact, on May 25th. So stay tuned for Bombay Binge.
Bombay Binge.
So on this episode we have Manu Chandra. Hi Manu.
Hi.
So Manu is the chef and partner at Fatty Bao, at Monkey Bar, at Toast and Tonic, which is opening next week on May 25th. That's a lot of restaurants and bars.
Well, they're across the country, so there's a lot to oversee, I guess.
Yeah,
you know,
and so we're going to be talking about Toast and Tonic, right?
I mean, we are, but like it's a general chat as well.
Okay. So now that we have Manu in the city, we're going to be talking to him about his new restaurant and generally all things to do with food.
Yes. And why we have Manu here is because, well, very interestingly, Monkey Bar was the first gastropub, so to speak, in the country, and very interesting food at Monkey Bar. And now every new place, every new bar opening in Bandra has the gastropub tag. So Manu, we'll come to that.
But first define
opening in the country practically.
Yeah, but first define gastropub. Like, how is a gastropub different from a restaurant that serves drinks?
Vibe, I guess. The vibe, the energy, and of course the typical definition of a pub. That's this was about 5 years ago, a little more than that, when we decided that we'd done a lot of fine dining and the company had to diversify, which was of course the Olive Group, and we had a few olives across the country, principally in the three main cities, Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore.
Right.
And we felt that it was time to do something which was a little more relevant to, of course, this exploding millennial market, and given that we were missing the pattern as far as the type of people who were going out increasingly was concerned.
Right.
And that really was the genesis of the concept for us. We were keen to take a lot of our learnings from a slightly more finer setup and try to juxtapose them onto something which would be a lot more approachable, affordable, and a lot more fun.
Right.
And I was fascinated with the gastropub sort of format that existed in the UK. It had just hit Singapore as a trend. It had hit the US a year before that. Of course, it's a bit of a qualifier. I mean, it's very hard to define in any certain terms. But the way it had transpired in the UK, it had become a lot more fine dining. So the gastropubs in the UK were definitely finer than what we had in mind. So
Right.
we were also fairly certain that we wanted to create our own definition around it, but the qualifier worked really well because food was a focus. We wanted to be a bona fide dining destination and also a really fun, easygoing place. Mm-hmm. Again, a lot of that after work, New York, Soho, London Soho style. You just go in, have a few drinks, grab a couple of things to eat, and you're done, and your bill shouldn't be more than X amount.
Right. And I think after Monkey Bar opened, there've been like a spate of gastropubs in the city.
Yeah, and they're sort of only increasing. Related to this, when the kind of food you created for Monkey Bar, there's so much of that now on menus elsewhere. Whether it's on par or not is a different question, but how do you then stay relevant within the brand? Do you keep sort of innovating the menu? This is Monkey Bar specifically.
Absolutely. I think reinvention is something that has kept us relevant for the last 5 years at least. We're perpetually trying to, either push the envelope as far as the food or the beverage offerings are concerned within the brand parameters, or we also do a bit of shock and awe, which is we might just completely turn everything on its head and reinvent again. And we've been successful in that as well, and we've done that with a couple of brands.
Give us an example.
I mean, Toast and Tonic is a classic example. We took Monkey Bar and completely turned the whole brand on its head and created a Toast and Tonic out of the first Monkey Bar.
Right.
There was, of course, a lot of... it made a lot of economic sense taking...
So how did you do that? How did you make the transition? Can you just explain that?
Well,
The
we
shock-
shut it for
Right.
a couple of months, and of course, that caused some ripples in the market. Everyone thought, oh, it's shut down, this and that. It hadn't. We're just being reimagined as a new brand. Because I felt, of course, we had enough Monkey Bars across the country by then. And Fatty Bar, of course, was going ahead with its expansion plans. We're about to open a fourth one in Bombay. And I really felt that there was still a gap in the market in that slightly finer... Well, when I say finer, it doesn't necessarily mean fine dining because, that concept itself, I think, is a little outdated. But definitely something which is a little more clean, if I could say that, and a little more sexy.
Is it for an older audience as well, you'd
It's
say?
actually, that's not how it's panned out.
Okay.
Again, the younger audiences, because there's so much of the same stuff now in the market, there's clearly a homogeneity,
Yeah.
which can be irksome if you're going out, because what's the differentiator? Everything starts looking the same, everything starts reading the same,
Yep.
everything starts looking the same. And when that happens, you want to be able to go out and sort of get that better, nicer, cleaner experience. It's a place where you can hear yourself speak, importantly, and that is also something that we're very focused on. I definitely wanted to, walk the talk of that whole biodiversity, taking a lot of local produce, putting it into interesting formats, not predictable ones, and doing a lot of stuff from scratch. And then, of course, the gin revival.
Right.
So there was multiple things at play which came together to create the sort of brand that we did a year and a half ago. And, with me, it's always a shot in the dark. You don't know what sort of thing you're doing because, it's not following any prescribed trajectory. It's not like this is a formula restaurant and we're going to be able to open this and scale it up. So it was interesting, it was innovative, and I think it had enough in terms of unique offerings to excite a lot of the customers into coming there repeatedly.
You said a lot of things that I want to talk about. There's this whole question of a lot of your food, there's no genre to it. It's, and now, like, global plates or globally inspired small places, these are not my words. These are words that have been sent to me in so many press releases. That's the new multi-cuisine.
Correct.
So does that sort of help reinvention but it's becoming it's ubiquitous as well. So then how do you sort of,
Or to put it another way, do you have fish tacos on the menu at Toast and Tonic?
Not yet.
Great.
I do have jackfruit tacos, though,
Yeah, he does.
with
I
goat
know,
cheese.
yeah, you're
and-
this big champion of jackfruit.
Oh, absolutely. Bajra, jowar, jackfruit,
Yeah, there's a lot of
batua,
millets. Yeah.
millets, you name it.
Yeah.
I actually find it quite uncomfortable when people sort of try to say that one's championing the cause of it, because really that just sounds...
No, I'm saying it because I hate jackfruit.
I'm
not speaking for
make
people.
you like it. No, but coming back to that whole championing point, I think it's kind of regressive that we went into this, this tailspin as far as restaurants were concerned, where there was no identity. There was definitely an identity crisis because there was just so much aping of the West and hoping that, not only hoping, it actually worked. I do feel that it was disruptive, but for the wrong reasons. And I mean, if nachos, pizza, and penne and cream sauce is going to become the benchmark, and cheesy fries of the offerings across a majority of the places, something is amiss.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be that vigilante who's going to come and correct it with jackfruit and millets, but just bringing it onto menus and getting people to, they have a choice. If they want to try it and they're excited by it and they want to come back for it, you're doing something right.
Right.
I think that in itself has now started causing a little bit of change in attitude when you read a lot of the menus.
Yeah.
At least
Well, there's
across
certainly
Bangalore.
jackfruit and more menus.
Yeah, there's a jackfruit tacos that
Yeah.
it happened in New York, which is a very unlikely place for it to be.
Yeah.
But generally, produce, like local produce, it's something we should be using anyway, right?
Exactly.
It's not
Exactly.
like we should be championing what's already available to us. That should be the norm, in fact. But so there is more use of that on menus now, but it's still, do you think it's still restricted to, I don't know how much you eat out other than the places you're working, Manu. I know you're a bit of a workaholic, but
I don't. That answers that.
yeah, I've never seen Manu eat, as I was saying earlier. But, everybody's saying local produce and we're getting it from this farms. And I think this whole utilizing it from your own farm or getting it from, other urban farmers or whatever, that's great. But there isn't still too much, I think, use of, like, say, millets, for example. I think that's, again, something that, I looked at the Toast and Tonic menu this morning, and there was so much emphasis on millets, which is really great. So it could be, like, people are using local produce, but it could be just, like, your basic stuff, like your tomato or your onions or whatever.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Like, what do you do? Are you, like, in the market looking for something that's consciously underutilized, or you're just like, look, I've eaten this somewhere, let me just give this a shot?
No, I think the one thing that I've managed to not do is try too hard, because there's a fine line in between looking contrived and looking genuine.
Yeah.
And that's why when everyone tries to, of course, going back to what you said about the global small plates, and is that the new multi-cuisine? Interestingly, 5 years ago, we had a review in a very well-known publication by actually a writer that I admire greatly, and she'd mentioned that this probably is the new multi-cuisine, and I thought she nailed it on the head. I said, yes, it is, absolutely. And we've thrived as a country on multi-cuisine restaurants. Everywhere you went, it would say Indian, Chinese, continental, and
Mughlai.
and Mughlai, of course.
Yeah.
Which is Mughlai and Indian somehow are different, but.
So it's not
yes,
a bad word.
I don't think so. I think customers do look for variety. Anyway, if you go to a so-called Italian or Western restaurant, people will, invariably end up making their own pastas and pizzas because that's how it plays out.
Right.
I want topping of this and I want topping of that. None of that belongs on that dish. It's not supposed to be saucy, but it ends up being saucy. The pizza is not supposed to be spicy, but it ends up being spicy. We do, as a people, like bold flavors. This format lends itself to being able to pick some of the best stuff from across the world and present it in really interesting forms. And if it's exciting, it works for the customer as well as for the restaurant. So no, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think increasingly people haven't really decided, they don't really decide that I want to go out to a bar or a nice buzzy space to eat this kind of cuisine. They just want to go out for a good meal and a good experience. And that's why everything else has started being so important also. The bar, how innovative that is. I mean, there's like, a fancy mixologist in every city now.
Well, let's talk about the bar at Toast and Tonic. So you have an entire menu of tonics, various kinds of
tonics and gin and tonics. Yes.
Yeah,
So exciting for someone like me. That's all I drink.
yeah, and you're right. I mean, there really has been a gin revival over the past few years. There was that gin bar at JW Marriott. I mean, it shut down. Arola had this gin menu.
I would say the last year actually, there's a lot of interest.
Even 212
in
All Good has a lot of interesting gin and tonics. So I mean, is gin and tonic, is it your favorite tipple? I mean, can you just talk about?
I mean, as far as spirits go, I definitely do enjoy my gins. I think they're fairly nuanced. I'm not much of a malt sort of drinker. I mean, I do drink wine, and I like very good wine, which is an expensive hobby. But luckily, if you're working in the business, it's not so bad. But
people send you free stuff.
Yeah, basically. And there's a lot of tastings and samplings, and I travel quite a bit for wine, and so when you start enjoying nuanced flavors and understanding it, I mean, that's one of the few luxuries that I sort of give to myself. And gin for me works really well in that sense, especially given how hot it is in this country overall. It's a great drink, and I mean, there's a very deep India connect to that drink, and of course it's now completely monopolized by the British. They're doing some of the best gins out there and some of the best tonics out there as well.
What's the deep India connection?
Tonic water.
Tonic water, right?
Yeah.
Tonic water. Anti-malarial.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Quinine.
Quinine. Why make your own tonics? I mean, I know like Schweppes sucks, but still.
Well, there's ways to fix Schweppes.
I hope
Put
you're not
lots
planning
of,
to be a sponsor on the show.
Put lots of nimbu, basically.
Because I've just ruined that.
No, you can. I mean, it's a little sweet, and I understand why they have to do that, because they've realized that, again, the Indian market has a penchant for sweeter and
mix.
spicier.
Right.
So they need to cater to a much, much larger segment. It doesn't make sense for them to create a small boutique brand.
Yeah.
There are some other people who are getting into the fray as far as tonics are concerned. I was just hearing about it yesterday. So it's great that people are trying new stuff. We started because principally I didn't want really good gin to be drowned by sweetness.
Yeah.
But I also realized very quickly that people did want a slightly sweeter edge to their drinks. So we've tried to strike a great balance, because most of our drinks are shrub-based, and which of course has some amount of sugar but also has vinegar. The vinegar plays a very important role in cutting out a lot of that sweetness. So the acidity actually balances it out. And that's where a lot of the fresh infusions come from. So we use nothing artificial in the restaurant.
Okay.
Everything is fresh, the cocktails especially. And again, there's a certain way of serving them, which is now, of course, pretty mainstream in the West, and I think people start doing it here as well. Large goblets, big balls of ice, and a clean drink. We infuse ice as well. It's just an addition of a fresh ingredient which makes the drink evolve as you keep sipping it, because a little bit of that flavor gets mixed into the larger beverage, and our drinks are potent, which most people realize after they finish drinking.
I know, because gin and tonics are very deceptive. You can keep drinking them
Yeah,
and
they
not
are.
feel anything, and then
And
before you know
recover
it,
really fresh the next morning, which is what I love about it. But do you have like a really extensive selection of gins, or is it the usual, your Beefeater, Hendrix, and Bombay Sapphire? Or
Yes, of course we have those. So I
Yeah.
think Bombay we should open with about 10 gins.
okay,
And
great.
not including the domestic gins,
Right.
but 10 gins.
Okay.
And hopefully by next year we could add a lot more, depending on who brings it in. I would love to be able to bring in small batches, but given how difficult it is,
Right.
with excise in this country and imports, that may not be a distinct possibility, but one would try.
when was the last time you had Blue Ribbon?
Yesterday.
Okay.
Don't tell us that toast and tonic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have no choice. If that is, and see, like I said, the drinks are so smooth and so well mixed that it's really deceptive.
Yeah.
Not so great alcohol can be turned into a great cocktail, and that's
Manu,
why.
you're selling us Blue Ribbon in the guise of...
I'm so glad he's saying it, because everybody's like, oh, there's premium liquor and this, and you can see what the bartenders are pouring. I didn't ask for that.
The one thing that I was trained on, which I really took to heart in culinary school, was we had a 1-week course on something called Truth in Menu Laws, and anywhere else in the world you'd get sued for lying, and you cannot do that.
Yeah.
If it is what it is, say what it is.
Yeah.
You cannot bull your way through menus, but a lot of people do, and I think that's just terrible, because
And on premium cocktails.
that's just not cool at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've caught them in the act, but then what is a threat from me? Nothing.
Something is amiss when you go into a space and they're selling you a 500 rupee cocktail with, XYZ premium liquor, and you're like, there's no way this costing works out, because this is practically at cost. And that's usually when the alarm bells should start ringing.
Right.
And of course, one can weave any story about how that's free stock or somebody's giving me a great deal, but net, that kind of costing is very difficult to run unless you have tremendous volumes.
Yeah.
Which very, very few places do, to be honest. So, yeah, I mean, a Beefeater and Bombay are essentially what probably constitute 85 to 90% of our fastest moving.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who, of course, opt for Hendrix. I wouldn't know the pattern in Bombay yet, because we
Right.
have a lot of new gins in Bombay. So we have Gin Murray, we have
Oh,
Sip
great.
Smith.
Gin Murray's, I love it.
Well,
Yeah.
and Sipsmith is outstanding. I'm also getting some Fever Tree in the tonic.
The
water.
tonic. I had it first at Olive in Bangalore.
That's right.
Yeah, and I was like,
right.
wow, this is great. And I think I just wanted to switch to just having the tonic.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Just
I got no complaints with trips.
there's something new called mixed tail. But anyway, I think this is becoming a completely gin conversation. You mentioned you make your own mustards. You're also curing your own meats. You're smoking them.
Mm-hmm.
Why do all this? Why put in all this effort?
It's not available. It's just a simple answer because I wanted certain texture, certain flavors, and much like the nacho menus across the country, a lot of the cured meats, the charcuterie that we get is now incredibly standardized to an extent where you can barely tell the difference apart. So, XYZ producer or manufacturer would come to me with like that many samples, but they're all just highly homogenized from a, not using that term, grammatically using it literally. So they are homogenized in the sense they're all pasty stuff, which all taste, they all taste like hot dogs essentially.
Yeah, but it makes a huge difference when a restaurant cures its own meat. Like, I mean, I remember having pastrami at Indigo Delhi for the first time, and this was way, way back. So it's obviously evolved a lot since then, but like it really blew my mind because that was the first time I was having decent pastrami. So it makes a huge difference when
we have pastrami as well.
Yeah, I know. I read your menu last night and I saw
It's a process. Well, we have it in Bangalore. I don't know if we're going to have it in Bombay.
Can you
We should.
replicate that in other cities when you're expanding at the rate that you are?
Well, Toast and Tonic is going to be a slightly different story, and there's a few reasons for that. A, of course, real estate is difficult in Bombay as far as the ability to do a lot of interesting stuff in controlled environments. Here, there's spikes in weather which can be disastrous to stuff like this. So I usually like doing a lot of this out of Bangalore, where there is, of course, a certain consistency in the weather. I have a much larger space where I can work out of. Everything is done under my watch, and so there is constantly an audit and consistency. I get a lot of stuff tested constantly also. And then when we set up that sort of supply chain, which is internalized, it's easy for me to move a lot of that to a Bombay and then dish it out rather than trying to have to create the same thing again over here.
You live in Bangalore.
That's right.
Is that just like the reason why you start there, or has it become like a test market? Like, if you had to set up something in Bombay first, would you ever do that? Like,
I have to move here for that.
So it's just basically the logistics because you stay there and it's easier.
For me to incubate any brand, I need to be around it for a fair amount of time.
Right.
And that's been true of all the 3 or 4 brands that you've seen come out from our repertoire. So I was there every day for the first 6 or 8 months of Monkey Bar. That was true of Fatty Bao as well, and now with Toast and Tonic. So you can steer the product in the right direction. And see, I'm not the aspirational sort of chef. I'm not the guy who's going to turn around and say that this is going to be my magnum opus and I'm just going to blow everybody out of the water because this is how fine dining I can be, etc. And watch my bubbles and stuff like that. That's not me. I'm a little more of a realist as far as restaurants, as commercial operations and businesses are concerned. I do understand that I need to keep the place full. I do understand that there is going to be a cross section of people who's going to come in. Some very discerning, some really, those who probably, I call them uninitiated. So they're trying things for the first time. They might find things alien tasting. I've seen it happen in so many things. I've had people eat brie in front of me for the first time and be completely violated by it because they're like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
You've never, you're not used to it. So there is a learning curve involved.
Yeah.
And, in this country especially, irrespective of which city you're in, it could be Bombay, it could be Bangalore or Delhi. And it's in Calcutta when we put brie on the menu, it was amazing how many people didn't know what it was. So there was, and yet it is the number 1 selling dish over there.
Yeah.
So, they've tasted it, they've liked it, and they start coming back for it. So there is a little bit of a learning curve involved with a fancy or, experimental restaurant. So you need to strike a balance. So you have some stuff which is, in the block hole. It's deeply comforting. It's nice and tasty. It has provenance. It is fresh. But it's not intimidating. And then you have some intimidating stuff also.
Yeah.
Which
Like jackfruit.
like jackfruit.
No, jackfruit isn't. You have a makhana ice cream. Is it there in the Bombay?
Not yet.
Oh, I was really looking forward to that.
The humidity is insane. I mean, you can make a makhana crisp and Bombay will make it limp in like 5 minutes.
God, yeah.
But this place has such a huge makhana eating population.
Yeah.
Right?
Where?
Well, now it
In
does.
Bombay.
Yeah, of
All the
course.
fitness nuts.
Now it's coming
it's
in
everywhere.
bags. And
Yeah.
That's it for this episode. Thanks, Manu, for being on the show. And we'll be back next week.
thank you for having me.
For more on what's happening in the city, read thedailypow.com. Also subscribe to our newsletter on the website. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're The Daily Pow. And you can find this podcast on the ivmpodcast.com.
The Podcast is an IVM production, and if you like our show, you should check out Drinks and Destinations with Rojita and Samira. It's a handy guide to the world of wines, spirits, and travels around the world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Sorry to say, but there's been a slight delay due to the apocalypse having suddenly begun. As you can see, there's death, destruction, and chaos taking place all around us. But don't you worry, food and drinks will be served shortly, and I would recommend checking out
IVM Podcasts.
to get some of your favorite Indian podcasts. We'll keep you going till this whole thing blows over. Thank you.